For centuries, the story of the fall in the Garden of Eden has been painted as this moment of God just losing his temper, this huge cosmic rejection. But what if that's not the whole story? What if we've been looking at it all wrong? Let's explore a perspective that reframes this whole thing, not as a divine meltdown, but as a masterful legal maneuver.
So, on one side, you have that picture we all know, right? An angry God, furious, slamming down the gavel, and casting his kids out. But on the other side, a totally different view starts to take shape. What if this was the action of a wise judge? Not lashing out in anger, but moving fast to contain a really dangerous spiritual infection before it could spread and poison, well, everything.
So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with that common misunderstanding. Then we'll look at God's response as more of a diagnosis. From there, we'll trace the infection to its real source and see the expulsion from Eden as this kind of quarantine of love, all leading to a perfect cure, and finally, restoration.
All right, so first up, let's just tackle that old fear-based image head-on. The idea that the moment Adam fell, God just exploded with anger.
This quote right here, it's really the key to this whole way of thinking. It argues that God's response wasn't emotional. It wasn't reactive at all. No, it was a calculated, necessary, legal move designed to protect the integrity of his entire creation. Okay, and this brings us to that crucial moment in Genesis chapter 3. The very first words God speaks after the fall are so revealing, but maybe not in the way we've always been told.
Just think about that for a second. That angry, condemning question that we all kind of assume he asked, he never actually said it.
Instead, he asks this, "Where are you?" And wow, that changes everything. It completely shifts the tone of the whole interaction, from a courtroom prosecution to something more like a doctor's visit.
And this really nails it. The question, "Where are you?" isn't about geography, it's about condition. It's the voice of a doctor looking for his patient, trying to figure out how bad the damage is, trying to find the source of the pain. It's a question about relationship, not an accusation.
So, just like a doctor traces a disease back to its source, God starts this sort of spiritual investigation to find out exactly where this rebellion started.
And you can see how it plays out. God asks Adam, who immediately blames Eve. He then turns to Eve, and she points to the serpent. And right there, the trail goes cold. God doesn't ask the serpent a single thing, he just straight up pronounces judgment. Why? Because he's found the source.
And here's the big takeaway from that. Humanity was tricked, yeah, but the serpent was the one doing the tricking. This infection was introduced into the system by an outsider. So in this view, humanity was actually the victim of a spiritual crime, and God zeroed in on the real bad guy, the architect of the whole treasonous plot.
So, once you understand that this was an infection, not just a simple mistake, the whole expulsion from the garden looks completely different. It stops looking like a punishment born out of anger and starts looking like a protective measure born out of love.
The core idea here is containment, kind of like a medical quarantine. To save the entire system, the infected part has to be isolated. You do that to stop the spread and to create a safe space where you can work on a cure. It was an act of preservation.
You see, pushing humanity out of the garden and away from the tree of life actually stopped them from being stuck forever in a state of sinful immortality. It was a severe mercy, for sure, but it was a necessary act of protection designed to preserve life, not just to punish it.
So a legal infection requires a legal cure. The quarantine, that was just a temporary fix, right? A way to manage the crisis until the perfect final solution could be rolled out. And that solution had to deal with this core tension between justice and love.
Think about this balancing act. If God was only love, he'd have to just ignore sin, which would make his perfect universe totally lawless and chaotic. But if he was only justice, humanity would be condemned with no way out, which is completely hopeless. The real solution had to satisfy both, perfectly.
And at the cross, that is exactly what happened. The righteous demands of the law weren't just tossed aside, they were fulfilled down to the very last letter.
The debt of sin wasn't just forgiven by forgetting about it. No, it was paid for, in full, through Christ's sacrifice. Justice was completely served.
And this leads us to this beautiful conclusion. When perfect love finds a way to satisfy perfect justice, the result is redemption. It's the ultimate cure for that legal infection that started all the way back in the garden. So, what does this all mean for us? Like right now? It means the whole foundational story of our relationship with God isn't one of rejection, it's one of redirection, pointing us toward this incredible restoration.
This perspective just changes everything about how we see ourselves. We are not the descendants of outcasts. We're the heirs of a kingdom who were just temporarily protected and set apart while our inheritance was being secured for us.
So the bottom line is this: the exile was never the end of the story. It was just a necessary step on the road to being found. That separation wasn't for destruction. It was to make salvation possible. It's not rejection, it's restoration in progress. And that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. That flaming sword, the one placed at the entrance to Eden, was it a keep out sign born out of anger? Or was it the protective fire of a father guarding his children from a permanent death, just holding the way until Christ, the true door, could come and reopen it forever?